Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Rescuers are desperately searching for any survivors trapped in the rubble of a collapsed 12-story residential building north of Miami in the United States. Search teams have been working around the clock and have reported hearing people banging beneath the debris. What caused the collapse of the building early on Thursday morning remains unclear.
As the mayor had said, we have hope, and every time that we hear...
At least 102 people have now been accounted for, but it is uncertain how many were in the building when it came down. President Joe Biden has approved an emergency declaration for Florida, meaning the federal government will help state agencies with the relief effort. A tornado has swept through several villages in the Czech Republic, killing 4 people and leaving more than 100 others injured. The storm blew the roofs off buildings, uprooted trees and overturned cars. Winds of at least 219 kilometers per hour were recorded, with the worst hit areas resembling a war zone. Hailstones the size of tennis balls were reported, and local officials said a string of villages had suffered considerable damage along a 25-kilometre stretch of the road. The government said around 1,000 homes had been affected, and local authorities were working to provide accommodation for people whose roofs had been destroyed. A Belarusian journalist who was taken off a Ryanair plane forced to land in Minsk has been transferred to house arrest. Roman Protasevich was taken into custody on suspicion of inciting unrest after his dramatic capture in May. His girlfriend, Russian citizen Sofia Sapega, was also arrested with him and has also been moved to house arrest. Since their capture, Mr. Protasevich and Ms. Sapega have been paraded on Belarusian TV confessing to criminal activity in recordings which have appeared to be made under duress. The United Nations has condemned the recruitment of child soldiers after Burkina Faso's government said a recent massacre was mostly carried out by children and adolescents. The attack is considered to be the worst in years in Burkina Faso, and more than 130 people were killed. Attackers raided the village of Solhan on the evening of June the 4th, opening fire on residents and burning homes. Local officials in Burkina Faso's north said child soldiers had been used by militant groups over the past year, but this is the most high-profile case. The US is planning to evacuate thousands of Afghans who worked for the American military ahead of September's troop withdrawal. The plan could involve moving as many as 50,000 people to other countries, along with their families. Afghan interpreters who have worked for the US for years fear reprisals from the Taliban after their withdrawal. As many as 18,000 Afghans have applied for US visas, but the lengthy process has been hindered by delays. The plan is to move them to other countries before September, where their applications can be finalized in safety. Donald Trump's embattled personal lawyer has been suspended from practicing law in New York State over his demonstrably false and misleading claims about the 2020 election.
Oh, the networks! Wow!
The 77-year-old Rudy Giuliani, a former mayor of New York, became the public face of Trump's legal challenges after the former president refused to accept his loss to President Biden, filing dozens of lawsuits in courts across the country and suffering a series of defeats. The 5-judge panel ruled that Mr. Giuliani had lied to the public and in legal statements about voter fraud in a way that had been defined threatening to the public interest and warrants interim suspension from the practice of law. And finally, nearly 6 decades after France's prehistoric LASCAUX caves were made off-limits, visitors will be once again able to tour the site, only this time in virtual reality. From July the 8th, at a museum in Paris, groups of 6 people wearing virtual reality headsets will be able to take a 45-minute interactive tour through the 235-metre long cave network dubbed the Sistine Chapel of the Prehistoric Era. The cave contains paintings of animals, human figures and abstract signs that date back as far as 17,000 years. And that's your international news around the world in 5, and now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.